And welcome back everybody to KSP Interstellar Quest, a Kerbal career playthrough in which we are using the mod Promised Worlds, the Promised Worlds of KSP2, and we're on a journey to build an interstellar vehicle, but for that we need a ton of science. And so today we have a rather different episode on our normal kind of experiments that we do. We have Jedediah Kerman and Patney Kerman, who are at the moon since our last mission, and they have been very busy. So the engineers back on the moon have been busy creating a craft from spare parts and parts they were able to build with the workshop and the menus that you have available. And they, over time, turned this into what has been lovingly called the Mun Hopper. And today is the time that we are really going to put this Mun Hopper to the test. We're going to put it to yours. And we have Jeb and Patney, I was going to say driving their way over there, but it's more like sliding their way over there. The Mun Hopper is parked in our second landing zone. So in the future we'll have landing zones and takeoff zones, but for now we have two main landing zones and takeoff zones, of course, which are slightly larger areas where we've created a regolith barrier to protect the base from all the moon dust that will be blasted up by the engine. And the Mun Hopper is a very special vehicle because it has been designed to not go into orbit. It could potentially get into orbit. It should be easily to get into orbit, but from there it would have a little place to go. It has about 800-900 meters per second of delta V, but it cannot withstand re-entry on Kerbin. And we have Jedediah here testing out all the controls and the AGC computers to see how we can go to full final descent and land ourselves in a crater not too far from KSC. We're testing out the flight systems and the solar systems and very soon the drilling systems, because this is a self-sustaining craft. The Mun Hopper has a minor drill on board, it has cooling fins, it has got a reactor, and as long as it stays in the sunlight, it should be very able to create its own fuel for the next hop. And here we see the solar panels are deployed, and I struggled a bit to figure out why it was not drilling up ore, but I first have to do a geological survey. Unfortunately, I did bring the instrument to do that, and you have to turn some stuff on and off and see, hey, there's a geology report now, so from there we can actually start to drill and obtain some ore from the soil. Though it's not working instantly, you have to... I'm a software engineer, so turning stuff off and on typically solves the problem, which is exactly the case in this scenario. It didn't solve the sound problem because you hear there is no sound, but we'll fix that by rebooting in a later moment in time, which is now. And Patney is enjoying his time on the surface. Jedediah will decide to stay the entire flight inside, but Patney is really loving all these new biomes. And they are on a mission to follow the sun. They will circumvent the moon, hopping from place to place, hopping from crater to crater. And yes, we're doing this for science. This is going to bring in a ton of science from the craft, but we're also doing this for a mission. So we have picked up a contract, and don't remember by heart which ones it were, but hey, you can see this. This is like 6 times sped up, and you can see the solar panels tracking the sun, filling up the ore tanks, and then getting the craft ready to go to our first real destination, which I don't remember the exact sequence in which we entered the crater, but we went to East Crater, Southwest Crater, Northwest Craters. Obviously we started off in the Twin Craters. I think we didn't land on the Polar Crater, but we also picked up the East and the Large East Crater and the Far East Side Crater. So lots of craters that have interesting biomes. Craters are super interesting for a number of reasons. So one of the reasons is that the impact brought the regolith that was deeper buried in the Mun to the surface, which means we can research this, and it will tell us something about the time the Mun was created. This is how we do it on Earth, well, at our moon. And at the same time, these craters brought some interesting material because the meteorites that impacted or created the craters brought some interesting material. Anyway, we made it to our second landing in our first major destination, and we're opening up the drills, the science, and the ISRU unit, as it's called. So this is the little unit that has been tucked to the side of the spacecraft. It is from the Wild Blue mods. I think this is from Pathfinder. Well, look at that sunset. Using the sunshade as a kind of an iris for his photograph. Yeah, so this takes a couple of hours to fill up the tanks, and then we can just blast off, follow the sun, keep going along in a 270-degree angle, and the first part of the mission is pretty easy. Boost up to something like 10,000 kilometers. Get up as much horizontal speed as you can as quickly as possible. And then on the way back we do have to slow down a bit and pitch up a bit. You see me pitch up a little bit because otherwise I found we came in too steep. We would actually crash. And that would be bad. You can imagine that would be bad. We are also using MagJab landing assistance to figure out where we are going to land. I don't want to land on a ridge or on the top of a crater. So I'm using this little red line to figure out where we are and where's a good spot to land here. There's no big rocks. This looks like a perfect landing zone. And Jedediah becomes very skilled in maneuvering and piloting this vessel. The vessel does have a docking port on the front, like the standard we've been using so far, which is a kind of a junior docking port, which I think I might try to put on all my crafts, so they can be docked if necessary to a future space station or other way of transporting craft in orbit, which is the normal way for me to handle these kind of missions. Put a large space station in orbit of the moon and then have kind of moon ferries that go up and down. However, in this playthrough, direct descent makes so much more sense. And here we go, getting more fuel in there. I love these solar panels. We also see the radiators. Like for these drills and ISRUs, you really need a different type of radiators. So in this playthrough we're using two types of radiators. The normal KSP radiators that are good for cooling down the spacecraft. And for the extreme heat with a higher temperature, we have a separate temperature loop and a separate set of radiators. As we cross over the canyons, I realize I've never been here before in low Mun altitude, and so Patney, daring as he is, exits the vehicle and does an EVA report for some additional science. And Jedediah is far too busy flipping all the switches and, hey, this is interesting, I didn't see this button here before. So he's just going through all the options in the manual while at the same time, probably on a kind of an autopilot, descending into a large crater. I think this is the southeast side crater. We forgot to set the timer, but there it is. The timer is running. How many seconds will it take him to get down to the surface of the Mun? And then just barely in time I managed to flip away from the large boulders. Parallax boulders have collision effects on them, so this might very well have tipped over my vessel had I not been paying attention. Or just a little bit later than I actually did pay attention. Anyway, he's back out there gathering more science, and I think we're getting close to our final biome. And he's enjoying the sights. Which is interesting because his colleagues are now spending some time in the lunar night. So we're taking about 3 days, I guess, 3-4 days to hop around the planet. We left at dawn and we will return at dusk. So I'm not sure if that's 3 or 4 days. I always miscalculated a little bit, but I think the lunar cycle was something like 3 days on KSP. In real life, of course, it's something like 2 weeks, which is one of the major challenges to survive a lunar night. But in KSP this is easily done. Anyway, we've done our science, we've done our fuel collection, we are ready to blast off. I've found this craft super easy to fly. I'm not sure if it's the reaction wheel or the balancing that I spent significant time on in the VAB. But she flies like a dream, she's easy to handle, she has enough thrust to weight. And Yeah, we completed our mission. You can see the sun is in our back, is rising, and if you have sharp eye, you've already spotted the structures of the base. We are at least a long way from home, but within 100 kilometers these statics will pop up and give you a nice visual barrier. The slight pause, that was the physics effects kicking in. That means we're within 2 kilometers. The rover statue of the base is lit up, and Jedediah is performing his signature maneuver, in which he slams down a little bit, like 100 meters above the surface, aligns properly, uses the RCS to line out his position, and then drop down and do the final bit of the descent, landing right where he left off. He's getting pretty good at this. And what I actually did is I wrote down the latitude and longitude and put that in MacJab. So that's a good thing to do. We're of course taking the data with us, and we're also recharging our spacecraft for, well, we never know when it will be necessary. And they're taking the rover because the purpose of the mission is not to put this science into our laboratory, but to bring it home to Kerbin. And since we might accidentally put it in our laboratory, I decided to bring it over to Segan F7, which is parked on the other landing zone. And Patney is going to store all the data there and make sure it's very safe before the two of them return back to the lunar base. We use the drills to refuel the craft, but in the future we may want to use a different type of vehicle to refuel our spacecraft at the moon. And yeah, basically turn this into a real spaceport for everybody to use. That's been the episode so far. We'll get into expanding the base in the next episode. I hope you join me then, and see you then.